board members here tonight. Each of you needs 3 votes in order to have your application granted. If there's 5 of us, which there normally would be, that means 2 people can be in a bad mood and deny you, and you can still get your application granted. Tonight, that's not the case. If 2 people decide your application should not be granted, then it will not be. So each of you has the right, at least as I administer this board, to decide that you want to adjourn this until next month, when the odds are, barring bicycle trips and things like that, that we will again have 5 people. So that's up to you. You can each, talk to whatever advisor you have, if you have one here, and decide what you want to do about that. And we'll do that not, by roll call, but as each of these matters is called. If you decide you want to adjourn it, no hard feelings. If it's the first time you've been on, you can adjourn it without having to give notice again. If it's the second time, then you do have to give notice again. It's a rule. We can't vary it. Everybody understand that? Yes, sir.
Is it possible to do a kind of a straw poll before voting?
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, we have had people stand up and announce that they would like to adjourn the decision, but still go forward with some explanation of what their application is for and why they're seeking it and that kind of thing. So that's a little bit of having it both ways. You may get some intuition from the questions and so forth, how people are feeling. You may even get some direction about what, if anything, you ought to change the next time. But it's not, you can't just do a dry run.
Right.
That's too good to be true. Okay, so we're all clear on that? Very good. We'll go in the order of the agenda, and the first matter up is 3 Oak Street, the Cups.
I think it's your first meeting, so yeah, that applies. So what do you want to
I don't know.
Can I?
Yes.
Should we, can we ask to change the order of the?
Sure.
So that we could talk
Talk
about
about it? Sure, absolutely.
Are you second as well? Or is,
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think John's got about 9 applications.
The next one
out.
after that would be, Bernstein.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, but you wanted to ask a
You'd
question?
rather,
I don't know the process. So, as I understand it, if we go through and you look at my project and you deny it, I cannot come back. It's one time only. Is that correct?
It's one time only for the application as presented. Some applications are denied because it's simply too much, and then people have returned with somewhat less of an application. I mean, they get the idea that this is, we're here to give variances if it's reasonable, and what we would decide if we turn it down, usually it's on the basis of it not being reasonable, it's just too aggressive an application. And we've seen a lot of people come back with something less later on. So, you just don't go away, that's the problem, so. But no, it's not the end of it altogether, but that one application would be denied, and you couldn't come back with exactly the same thing.
Okay, and I have one other question, just to see how this, if we say I'm up there and we start discussing and you start asking me questions and I start to get a sense, can I just withdraw?
You can always withdraw.
this,
But then you're withdrawing the application.
this, I think,
As I come tonight.
Exactly.
right, what I think Tara's asking today is that this would be the first submission for this one. So as you had said, it may make sense in your case to present the project at this point. Is that reasonable on this one? And then, I don't know.
Well, you've got at least 2 clients here who are in the same boat about having 4 of us, and maybe what we ought to do, well, you're also on Bernstein, aren't you?
Yep.
You're of no use. Why don't we do the Bernstein application, and you'll be here for that, and then you can take out these 2 folks and talk to them about what they want to do, and we'll take the other 3. Is that okay?
Okay.
I don't know if Bernstein wants to go forward.
You go forward, we'll judge the mood of the board.
I guess I've scared everybody
Yeah, you
sufficiently.
scared everybody tonight.
John, it's your call.
I hate
I
to be
could
my
go,
call.
John.
You wanna take,
Well,
these-
all of your clients
yeah,
have.
take them all
Why don't you take
outside
all
and
your
chat about
clients?
Why
it?
don't we do-
And look, just because one of you wants to go forward or not, doesn't mean the others have to. Okay? And I'm not suggesting, please, I'm not suggesting that there's a lot of negative feeling. I just have to give this, it's like, it's like when you're interviewing a witness, you have to tell the witness up front that this could be reported to the board or something like that. It's automatically, you have to do this every time. So don't take it as a negative
It's not a reason.
information either.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Okay,
Goodbye, John.
thank you.
I hope we see you all later.
I'm leaving my bag.
Yeah. All right, then on Malone folks. I guess the next one up is Ms. Juan and Mr. Gold on South Tucker Street.
Hello.
Hi. You have proof of mailing?
Yes.
Good.
We dropped that off. I have the number.
I'll take it. Thank you very much.
That's my last copy, so I assume.
Okay.
Susan Reardon, the architect. Is this on?
It's supposed to be, but, I'm sorry, your name is Susan?
Susan Reardon, I'm the architect.
Okay, great.
And this is Kendall, the owner.
Okay, excellent.
I'll just start with, we had a house that was built in 1880 on a very small piece of property. And what they're looking to do is put just a small deck so they can access the backyard. Right now, they're signing up storage with this like a balcony that is like, you open and you're right there.
I didn't even see a balcony, it just looked like it opened and there was a drop to the backyard.
Yes, and like a gate to protect my kids from all.
Yeah, right. So anyway, the idea is that it's off the kitchen and
right.
for young kids and like to, just have like access from the house, access to the house. The other thing is they want to add a shed at the corner. We want to put it away from the view, straight out on the other side, so that this would be gardens and play area, and the shed will hold all the things that are needed. The problem is the site is very small, so it's already over coverage. Anything we add adds to that. But considering it's a very old house, and the house is basically maybe 5 or 6 inches off the property line. Our deck is a foot and a half, so we're bringing it and not making it as bad as the house.
It goes, am I right that the stairs down from the deck you proposed would be slightly farther west into the property than the end of the house?
That's correct.
And how much is that?
About 18 inches.
Okay. Question I asked Ms. Juan when I went by the other day. I mean, we have restrictions on sheds being, they have to be a certain distance from property lines. And you've got violations of both property lines. Have you thought about putting a shed in the back of the house where you wouldn't even need a variance for that?
So,
Either
yes.
one, anywhere back there.
So obviously this is a small lot with a small backyard, and my concern with that, the reason I would prefer it in this corner is it will eat up the little bit of space that I will have to enjoy the backyard with my kids, to throw a ball around, to, I don't know, go on the table or but something to enjoy the backyard. Anywhere in this vicinity, right behind the house, just seemed like it would be in a way where this corner is sort of space that seems like dead space that can't really be productive ever because the neighbors on Continent have a very big external, I don't know if it's a garage, it's like a second structure, I don't think cars go in there, but 2-story big
That's good.
in that corner, and then my neighbors on this side also have an external structure that's big. So like kicking a wall, this would never be very productive space, so it seemed natural that that's the place for the shed. Also in terms of getting stuff to the front of the house. But it's mostly to maximize our backyard. I also just would note though, where I these meetings or know really what your concerns are, but I don't think this location will bother any of my neighbors. I know this neighbor submitted a letter supporting it.
You didn't get that.
To the planning board,
Planning board,
because it
okay.
requires removal of a tree.
Right.
And they don't like that the tree is eating up their garage basement or the basement of their foundation of their structure.
So they want the tree down.
So they want the tree down, and I guess my point is, since they have a huge, in comparison, structure, they won't be able to see the shed. Same with this family. They won't be able to see the shed because it's sort of hidden in the corner. Once we move it here, then they will see the shed. So to me, this is the optimal location.
Puts all the structures in one corner and then it frees up the other corners for gardens and views.
Growing tomatoes or something like that.
And we do have tomatoes, because we thought about the other corner, and it's just, we have a garden there, there's a fence here that the neighbors, it would block their entrance.
Yeah.
And it would just impede our ability to use it. And so this just seemed natural, and it feels like given the huge garages or whatever the external structures, I'd ask you to allow me to build a tiny shed.
I think you make a good point. I mean, it says, the code says no sheds within 10 feet or whatever it is of the two property lines, but in this case, it is true that the shed will not block anybody's view, except your view of the two structures that are next to you, which you probably don't care about all that much.
Yes.
And that is, I'm not an architect, but in my untutored view, that's probably the most logical place to put it. I was just asking if you thought about it, and maybe you didn't, said no, but that's okay, at least it's with me.
And I would just stress, this is, since we don't have a garage, we don't have a driveway, and our basement is horrible.
1880s house.
We need, this will be so helpful in terms of storage of lawnmower, shovels, kids' bikes. Right now, the front, we always have the kids' bikes, the strollers.
But they're all well hidden by Halloween decorations at the moment, so it's okay.
True. But we really could use the storage.
What's the level of the deck you propose? Is it,
It's just at first floor.
right, but is that as high as the fence on the north side? My impression is it was not, but I would like you to confirm
Well,
that.
that would be, it's like 4 feet there, and the deck is probably only about 8 feet up, yeah. At most.
Understand what I'm asking?
You're asking how,
Oh, this fence here,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
tall fence, it's taller than
is it 6 feet?
I don't have the exact height, I can run there. But,
Probably 60.
but yes,
Right, the deck is only up about, well, how many steps? About 3 feet.
Okay, so your neighbors might be able to see the top of your head sitting on the deck, but that's about it. You're not gonna tower over the fence, is what I'm getting at.
I think that's fair, and I also just, this doesn't directly answer your question, but at first we had hoped for a much bigger deck, and then we realized, yes, to me, this is more of a platform with stairs.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions from the board? Anybody in the congregation? Okay. I was impressed when I visited the site with the sort of common sense of the application. And the deck is not going to be big. It is in a logical spot to go out to the backyard, which is a very reasonable objective. And although putting a shed, normally we find people with sheds that have never been legalized. And then the question is, how much of an obstruction is it for the neighbors? So it's a little odd to be approving just putting one in there, but it is so blocked up by the structures to your west and south that I just don't think it makes a difference. So I'll move to grant the application. Do I have a second?
You do?
Vote from the left. Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Those of you who are talking to John, we only grant one a night. Okay, next up would be Renata DeLuca, North Broadway. Hi,
Take those, thank you.
great, thank you.
Matthew Burns, I'm the architect representing this application. This is for a legalization of a deck that was constructed to replace an existing deck, and also to legalize an existing shed that had not been legalized. The application originated because of the deck.
The original deck, which was taken down, was not itself legalized, right?
No, it had been, it was, yes.
And why do you need approval
Because
on this?
the one that replaced the previous one is bigger by 120 square feet. And we are already exceeding maximum lot coverage.
No, when I went out there and spoke to the people, I got the impression that the new deck was just about the same as the one that you took down.
That's what they want to believe, but the documentation shows that it's,
120 square feet is a lot.
it is.
How big is the deck itself?
Um,
You should probably look here.
give me a second. I have it. The previous one was 3. The previous deck was kind of cut off right about here, and this is the 120 square foot end.
I see.
Okay.
So, to legalize the existing, given the existing, even before the additional 121 square feet, was already exceeded the lot coverage.
Yeah.
Through the planning board process and by obtaining an updated survey, we also discovered that the storage shed lied, as you can see, barely within the setbacks. So that is part of the application. So, again, these are all existing conditions. The deck is probably 6 months old. They did it just after the winter. And the shed has been here for as long as anyone can remember.
Okay, now you're representing, speaking for Ms. DeLuca, right?
Yes,
She was not there when I went by.
her son was there.
Her son was there, her daughter-in-law was there. And there are a few things we talked about. One of them is an issue we have nothing jurisdictionally to cover, and that is whether you have to put another supporting beam under the deck near the
That's being
house.
handled with the building department.
And that's gonna happen.
Yes.
Okay. But the interesting thing I found interesting in the conversation in addition was they're quite willing to take the shed down
Correct.
and to remove that from the application.
They hardly use it anymore. Once it was discovered that this was an issue, he volunteered and said, I'll take it down. So I said, let's go to the board, let's see what they say. I'll offer that it can be removed, but let's at least put it on the application because it was raised by the planning board. And we are basically here as a result of the planning board.
Right. Right. And then he also said, you know, it's not that, it's very old, the shed,
Correct.
and we could find it down the road at some point, which would not be good for anybody.
The other thing is too, this is located, and the dimensions here are based off of, scaling off the survey. So whether, how accurate this is,
Yeah.
It could be
I
a
think that's,
couple of inches or a couple of feet.
if you're gonna take it down, I think it's moved, so we don't need to worry about that. Let's see your numbers. So the deck adds 16% to the coverage,
Correct.
but that's the whole deck.
That's the whole deck, right. And again, the ad is 121 square feet over what was previously.
Which would be, if my math is right, 4 to 5%.
Correct. And you saw the site, it's very well protected. Again, these are improvements that have been here for a while, even the previous deck was there. Predated 1984, I believe, when they bought the house. I think that the site, although steep, is not overly developed. And I think it's really hardly noticeable.
It's well protected from other properties, you really can't see it much at all.
The only, yeah, this is a road back here too, so.
Right, that's the road that the shed is going to fall into. So.
Eventually.
Got it. Okay, questions or comments?
I mean, I'm having a problem with the fact that they built it and didn't get permission to build it, and now they want to get permission to, you know, do what they already did.
Well, you
That's the
know,
problem I have with it.
that's-
Not so much what the application is, because I don't think it's terrible, but it's sort of offensive.
I think,
Yeah, and I think, plead ignorance on behalf of the owners. The previous deck was falling apart. They replaced it, didn't realize, I think somebody may have given them this information that if you replace an existing deck, you don't need to go through the process. I think that was the thought process they had.
and the problem with that is that's what everybody would say.
Correct. And then, of course, to your point, they went ahead and made it larger also.
Well, we've got lots and lots of structures in the village that have not been legalized. And when somebody wants to sell the house or make another addition or do something with it, the building inspector comes out and finds out about all of that. And we're quite frequently faced with a request to legalize what's already there. And it, you know, each of us is somewhat rankled by that. I mean, I think if you had no deck in the back, like the prior applicant, there's a much bigger deck, but, and you came in and presented this to us, it would have made less of a bad impression than simply having gone ahead and done it. What do you folks think? To my left.
It's not killing me. You know, it's a small addition to a deck. It doesn't seem super out of proportion with the house or the property or.
Well, I think it seems to fit. And if you'd
Yeah,
done it from
any
the
of it,
outset, it would have been a
yeah.
heck of a lot better.
Right, right. So, if they're not really using the shed, I'd rather see the shed come down. I don't like the shed where it's situated and,
Yeah. And you can't see that from it. It's about the only thing you
Right.
can see.
right,
You
right,
see it from the drive.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to swallow this and make a motion to approve it with the condition that the shed be removed.
Good.
And of course, we'll have to follow the New York State requirements for the beam supporting the interior of
Yes.
the deck, so that that doesn't become a safety problem. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, we'll vote for the right to make it interesting.
Maybe you should vote for more.
Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Offended though I am.
Have we bludgeoned you into this?
You didn't bludgeon me into it. Listen, I certainly, I think somehow the message should go out to people in this village that, you know, yes, we are concerned about the way, you know, things are constructed and how they're impacting other neighbors. This doesn't impact, but it's offensive that they did it. They made it bigger than it was, and then they're coming to us, you know, better to ask for, you know, forgiveness and for permission. Well, you know, I don't really like the precedent of telling people in the village that that's okay. It's not okay.
A reasonable comment.
I agree, and I also think the good news may be that a lot of these, as you pointed out, hopefully these things are starting to go away, and as people are starting to learn the hard way that it's not the way to do things.
Yeah, well, the hardest way would be if the village came in and told somebody to take it down. We haven't gotten there yet. Okay, it's granted. Thank you for your time. You'll get a letter confirming it. All right. Warwick Norton on Ardsley Avenue, And I must say, it's Ardsley Avenue East, even though the notice said Ardsley Avenue West, right?
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Yes,
it
it
did.
did.
I'm glad you found it.
Okay.
Somebody wanted to make trouble for you, and I don't see why they would. They could actually, pounce this on that basis, so. 'Cause they weren't properly warned or notified. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, speaking of. So my name is Natasha Welcome. I'm here from Obuchi Architects and representing Mr. Norton on the application for 1 Ardsley Avenue East. And we're seeking approval for a variance for modifying the configuration of an existing coverage of a brick terrace that currently exists in the rear of the property. Right now, it's sort of a half moon shape, and it's in need of repair anyway, and as part of that repair, the client wanted to make it more rectilinear in order to introduce a trellis up above it, which would provide some
Now,
much needed shade.
trellis or pergola, because they mean different things to me.
It
says pergola in the notice.
I think about them as synonymous, but I guess pergola.
Pergola.
Well,
Tell us what you want to put there,
okay.
without,
So this is what we're planning to put there. So there's a column structure, there's a beam that's gonna go across the front, and then smaller beams that are gonna tie into the back, that then will be enabled to grow greenery and provide shading on the terrace at the back of the house.
see, I think, and I don't want to fight about words, but I was a little misled, because I think of a pergola as a statue or some kind of, statuary in the middle of a round structure sitting out in the middle of somebody's lawn. We had one like that about a year ago.
Okay,
And trellis to me means what you described, which
okay.
is, where vegetation or something is growing and people are picking apples and stuff like that. So in my limited understanding, we're talking trellis, not pergola, right?
Oh, sorry, I apologize for
No,
my.
it's not you, it's probably me. Go ahead.
So what we're planning to do in terms of modifying the shape of it, where within that construct, we're keeping to what the existing coverage is of the brick terrace, so we're not increasing what that is, but we were directed by the building department and the planning board that because we're altering what the configuration of it is, that we need to get zoning approval because the property in its whole is already over what the.
Double.
It is double, yes, but all of the coverage, it's been in this state, almost its entire existence, at least insofar as our office has been dealing with the property.
Yeah.
So, and clearly, certainly to look at the flat plan, the coverage doesn't look as if it's double what of the site.
Well, the two things that made a difference to me, one was that your overall coverage number will be the same.
Mhm.
And in fact, I think you're actually withdrawing the outer perimeter a little bit less far away from the house, if I understand it. So that you have as you described, a half moon now, and it's going to be directly across,
Right,
sort of at the base of the half moon.
yes.
So you're not adding to the coverage, and if you were, that would be a problem, because your overage is so great. But the other thing that I observed from visiting is that this isn't going to bother anybody. I mean, nobody can see it, and it's not going to have any adverse effect on the neighbors. And I don't think anybody can see it from the roads or anything else. So,
Yeah, the three-sided corner lot perspective is challenging for sure.
yeah, but I think you're sufficiently well shielded that you're not going to have a problem there, or the neighbors are not going to have a problem. At least certainly nobody showed up.
Mhm.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay, I'll move the grant of this application as well. Do I have a second?
Second.
Let's take a chance and vote from the right.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, I see Malone is back. We did our best to discourage him, but
I never knew by the way, I never knew the difference between trellis and pergola either. Apparently, Wikipedia tells me trellises are vertical and pergolas are horizontal. Same kind of thing.
Oh.
I always thought.
So
I never knew
trellis
that.
with pergola.
You could have a pergola with a trellis.
Yeah, I think it's also used interchangeably, Bruce.
Oh.
yeah, well,
I wouldn't worry about your.
certainly in my limited mind it is, so there we are.
So we did, I think, Brian would like to hold off till next month. Let's cut.
Okay.
And I think both Bernstein and Fitzpatrick would like to.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Oh,
That was terrifying.
Can we confirm before we go that the last week we had letters that our adjoining neighbors had written that were not received by
We
the
did
board?
get those,
We
yes.
got
Okay.
3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay, good. You
Yeah.
got 3.
Wait a minute,
No,
no,
we got more than
we
that.
got 3 of yours.
Yes.
Did we
We
get
got,
letters?
I certainly did get, yes, we got them from the Richardsons, from another, yeah, we got about 4 or 5 actually.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
so I'll make sure those are.
They were sent.
I'll find them. and
We sent them to
forward
Sarah,
to you.
to Palermo.
Oh, Sarah Palermo, I got them from
Sarah,
her.
I think she
Yeah.
had assumed that they were for planning board or something, and they didn't find, so we can.
The
She
same
did
thing
send them
happened-
to me, so maybe for some reason she just sent them to me. I'll forward them to you,
Okay,
to
okay,
everybody.
that's great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, good.
All right, so this is another run through, you will have to give notice again.
Right,
Okay.
right, we did
Thank you.
discuss that.
So, what do you have to tell us that's new, John?
Do you want the Bernstein? That's the one that was in front of you.
Oh, you just want to put this all together?
Yes,
Oh, I mean, we could review what was new on Cut 51 right now. That would be-
I haven't seen anything that's new, I haven't seen any new papers or anything like that.
So what was submitted was we had updated, we provided a letter with some additional analysis. And we reviewed, there was a question about the zoning analysis for the neighborhood and whether we had used the attic at 100% or 50%. So what we did do is revise that zoning analysis. We went around to all the buildings, did site visits, and tried to confirm from that and the Greenberg GIS information, the property cards, whether the attics were occupied, and we went through and clarified all of that. So now in the zoning analysis, it indicates which buildings have attics counted as 100%, which buildings have attics counted as 50% based on the information that we could get from the property card and from a brief site visit. So that we did, yeah, there was concern when we last talked about the overall scale of the project. And so the analysis.
I don't have a revised analysis.
Did you receive this one? That's part of it.
Is this your October 10th?
This is the October 10th submission. Do you guys have?
3 options.
Yes.
I got that as well, yeah.
I've got to find out what's going on. may
You
be-
are out of the loop this month.
Obviously so, because I didn't get this either. They probably have a, my office is very careful, and they probably have bar all John Malone. Which would be good service in many respects.
For me.
Don't worry, Earl is under the same restriction, I'm sure. Could you send that to me, please? Since I'm glad we're putting it off, because obviously I would have wanted to study this before making a recommendation. Okay, tell me briefly what that says.
So basically, in terms of the zoning analysis for the neighborhood, so what we had hoped to provide by that is that what we're asking for is the attic is being counted as 100%, and that is because the attic is finished and accessed by a stair. So if you compare the percentage by which other buildings in the neighborhood that have their attic counted as 100%, if you look at those lines, then our overage, which is about 127%, so it's higher than the typical threshold, makes more sense because the other ones that are 128, 124. So if you separate the analysis that way and you look at the lines that are associated with houses that are being counted at 100%, that would make our request seem less substantial relative to those other ones. The other analysis that we've provided here is there's three options. The first option shows our current analysis that gets us to 120%. So in this case, the attic is accessed by the stair, and we're showing that it's finished. So in the Irvington Code, because that's the case, the entire perimeter all the way up to it is counted at 100%. So that's why we're at 127%. The other two options show, the first one shows that if the attic were accessed, the same attic were accessed by a stair, but was accessed by a stair, but was not finished, was basically left unfinished, the studs, what the FAR implication of that would be. So in both cases, the exterior volume of the house would be the same. The potential impact from the exterior volume would be the same. In that case, the overage would be 114%. So the third option shows if the attic was unfinished and accessed by a scuttle or a fold-down stair, what the FAR allowable FAR would be, and it shows that in that case, because the attic would be counted lesser, that it would be 100% allowable. So it would be by right. So these three options all apply to the same building, the same exterior volume.
But these aren't really options. You're not going to take the stairs out. You're not going to unfinish the attic.
Well, that's the thing. I think we could look at options. I think we're not presenting that way, indicating that that's what we want to do. What we want to do is occupy the attic. We want to occupy it via stair. What we're pointing out is that there is a by right option for this lot at the exact same volume with the same impacts. And the reason we point that out is that if there is a by right option for FAR with the same impacts, you should understand you could understand, I'm saying you don't have to, you could understand the request that we're making as a request for a change in the interior. So what we're asking for is, can we occupy the attic with the stair? And if you look at it through that lens, you say, well, what would be the impact to the outside world, to neighbors, to the character, if we're making a change that's entirely on the inside of the building? And I would argue that the impact is non-existent. It's like even less than de minimis because it wouldn't have any potential impact to the outside of the building. And the reason I brought it up is just the concern that what we were asking for was out of character or that it was substantial. So this was our way of arguing that it really, if there's a by right version, that this really shouldn't be considered as substantial and safe to know.
Well, they're not having another family move into the attic, right? So it's still, I mean, it's not becoming a two-family house,
Right.
it's one family, they're utilizing the whole house, they're utilizing the attic a little more than they otherwise would if it was just dead storage, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, yeah, that's
I might debate with you the use of the word option, but I understand what you're saying. They're basically giving us arguments.
It's an argument. It's not intended to imply that they don't want the stair and they don't want to finish the attic.
Yeah, this is a discussion we had, John and I had a few weeks back in his office, which is that there is an as-of-right version of this building, which asks for zero variance for FAR that is precisely the same building from the exterior. And so that was the point of the exhibits here, is to try to demonstrate
Okay.
that the FAR is really not about bulk, or the FAR overage is not really about asking for more bulk.
Well, you weren't here the last time, were you?
I was here.
You were, I'm sorry. But I told John then, and I guess I told you too, that for me, when you look at the proposal, and I think the very last page on your submission shows to me that there is some bulk issue with this proposal. It's simply well out there in terms of both first and second floor going beyond what is now occupied by an open patio with a cover. And the numbers, without having read what you have there, the numbers, as I said the last time, for the adjoining properties, not comparing it to people 2 streets down and all of that, but the immediately adjoining properties, without taking account of the argument you make here, are higher, substantially higher in each instance than any of the houses that are your neighbors, immediate neighbors.
Right. And
Those are the, I'm just repeating myself.
So the other information that we gave you by updating the neighborhood analysis, I would ask people to just take into account the adjacent neighbors that are going to have lower FAR requirements, or because the attics are being counted at 50%. Had the attics been finished and be at 100%, they would jump up. So there are only And we were trying to be very conservative, so the only ones that we've shown at 100% are ones that we have confirmation have a finished attic and a stair. So those are the only ones. The rest of them that we don't have information at that point, we've left at 50%. But if you look at the 3 or 4 that are calculated at 100% and you compare the, I'll just show you quickly what's there. We're not supposed to. So in this line under remarks, we've indicated which attics are being counted at 0%, and which are being counted at 50, and which are being counted at 100%. So our attic is being counted at 100%, and a similar attic at 100% in the neighborhood is at 124%. So the ones that are lower, there's one that's being counted at 100% that's at 161% of allowable. So if you look at those lines separate from the 50s, the 50% attics, they're going to be, these 50% attics are going to be significantly smaller. If we had calculated them all at 100%, you would have more examples of FARs closer to what our request is.
Your original submission had everybody at 100%.
Yeah, but the original submission was based on earlier GIS information. Greenberg has updated GIS. So we went through it very carefully through the GIS information and made sure that we had accurate information.
Okay. And is that revised chart, is that part of what you sent on October 10th?
Did you guys get revised?
Yes, that's point 13?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, obviously, those of us who were excluded from receiving this stuff, well, I'll give it a look, and we'll pick it up next month.
Okay, that's right.
Thank you.
Let me just see, we have it's the 21st.
Okay.
Which is the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. So,
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll put Cup to one side. And next up will be Bernstein.
So when we left off last with the Bernstein project, the concern was focused primarily on the fence and the request for the fence within the aqueduct buffer. We provided a visual impact analysis. I sent some videos that I hope people saw, but then also I hope that people made it out to the site because it's sort of crucial to see it on site, to see the potential impact that it would have to the property owner relative to the impact that it has to the aqueduct. So in our opinion, the visual impact analysis we did and the mock-up, when you look at the impact of the fence and the 2 fence locations that we mocked up one where we're asking for it and one where it would be outside of the buffer. And those are the 2 lines that are indicated here by an orange line. You have to remember also the fence won't be orange, right? It'll be black and it'll be planted up, so there'll be even less impact as shown there. Based on our analysis, there is no real benefit to making the fence more. There's no greater visual impact associated with the fence where we've proposed it versus having it outside the buffer. And what we didn't include in the visual analysis, because again we were focusing just on the visual analysis here, is the argument about the impact that it has on the yard. So again, the yard is a very narrow lot. The lot is a narrow yacht. Taking the 10 feet or so that out of that lot, if you've seen it, has a huge impact. It puts the fence in a very awkward location relative to the flat area and the long area of the lot. So now that I'm up here and saying that we're moving forward, I'm worried, has everyone been able to see the?
Yeah.
So, okay, did you guys see it also? So that's sort of where we stand on this. We think that the benefit to the applicant is great. The impact to the adjacent neighborhood and to the aqueduct is really de minimis. And in addition to that, if you look at other fences in the area, including fences that were recently approved, one that's just a little bit further along that was a property line fence that was allowed just recently, we really think that this is a reasonable and appropriate request.
2 or 3 questions. One, you just said planted up. What did you mean by that?
The drawing set that's shown here shows that there's evergreen planting across this sort of a woodland planting that's going across this whole line.
There's not now, but there will be.
There will be as part of the project, as part of the required full screening.
Okay. I noticed that the representation, that the orange line, that was a representation of where you want to put this, is east of two rather substantial trees at either end, and then it's west of a sort of a sickly-looking tree. Was that on purpose, or why?
I think the hope is that some of the more substantial trees would provide immediate screening, that one, I don't know if that hemlock's gonna make it. The goal is, what we agreed to with the planning board and Lucille Munns, the architect, is that the posts would all be hand dug for the fence location. She had no issue with the fence location, but I think the goal of putting it within that buffer and putting trees on either side of it was to try to get the benefit of that initial screening right now.
You mean trees or bushes? Where are you planning to put in?
We're putting in, there's a few American hollies that are there now. We're going to add more American hollies, which are fully evergreen, and then we're adding semi-evergreen rhododendron, what is called rhododendron maximus, maybe, rhododendron maximus. They're native, they're all native plants, and the goal that the Bernsteins have always had for this is to have it read more woodland. You know, they're not trying to make a hard, sharp area here.
One other question. I mean, if you have your pool off a bit from the house, off to the north, if you simply put a fence immediately around the pool, then you don't have a buffer issue at all, do you?
Yeah, I mean, you could, I think that given the size of the lot, the fence that we would typically have around the pool with the planted area and the larger deck, it would be hard to do here. Part of what we've done is trying to reduce coverage in general. There isn't any deck space. The pool is situated in the lawn, and marking off a barrier right around it sort of separates it in the lawn in an odd way. You wouldn't, pools that we've done that, pools that we've done that have a fence immediately around them are usually planted up all around them, and they're sort of set up as their own little planted area. There's not really room to do that here. So I think this was sort of our better approach here.
And you're still at the point where you're representing that there will be no patio pavers, no walkway, nothing between the house as it now exists and the pool. It's just
Yes.
going to be
That actually came from the client.
grass and mud.
Yes.
A lot of dirty feet. Okay. Questions or comments?
No.
All right. I'll move the granting of this application as well with two conditions. One of them is both of which I think you're in favor of. One is the proper screening of the fence after it's erected at what I will call the 20-foot boundary. And the other is that there's an undertaking which will be continuing, that there'll be no further coverage because of walkways or patios or things like that.
Yes.
And I think you're in agreement with both of those, right?
By the way, the fence is going to be bronze, not black.
It will probably end up being black because there's a condition that the planning board is going to, or the building department has been requiring these double pool fences. There's a pool fence to the property to the west. And we've been talking about potentially granting each property owner, granting each other easements so that we can have a single fence. The way Ed Marin's been interpreting the code is going to require us to have two fences next to each other, which means junk rows between them. There's no way to maintain them. And the theory is that it guarantees that if one side takes down their fence, the other side doesn't take down the fence. So we're going to try to deal with that with law. There should be a way to get an easement for each other to, it's a silly request. And it's happened a few times for us where we have situations where we have these fences that are 8 inches apart and lead to a horrendous condition. So the bronze was in the case that we can do that, not have a bronze fence next to a black fence.
Yes.
We would do bronze because they blend in with their bark color, and they recede a little bit more than a black fence would when they're in a woodland environment.
So it harmony.
Yeah, they're nice look, and we tend to choose those over the black, except, black is a very formal, like, if you wanted to see it, we could do black, but if you wanted to hide it, it's easy.
What is the building department, I mean, this isn't relevant to your application, but what is their objection to having a fence on the common property line?
You've had discussions with it. I mean, it's just, he said.
I have a fence like this is why I'm a little.
Yeah, no, if you're required as an owner to have a barrier around your pool, you can't use your neighbors, because in the future, your neighbor would potentially take it down, or the neighbor's fence most likely won't meet the pool barrier requirement. But in the case where you have two pool fences, which both meet the barrier requirement, it seems like there should be a way where that could be shared, and they're effectively on the property line, and you could write some agreement that said, you can't take it down, I can't take it down, and it has to be here until.
We don't have a pool issue, but it doesn't make any sense to me to require two fences. Okay, so there's a pending motion to grant the application with the two conditions I described. Do I have a second?
Second.
Folks on the left. Tom?
Yes.
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 Okay,
Thank you.
I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Fitzpatrick.
John, thanks.
Thanks, okay. So this is an initial submission. Initial submission for a modification to the attic level of an existing house in Barney Park. So it's an interesting house, just briefly, in the sense that the attic level has always been occupied. It's sort of a craftsman era house. It has 4 separate dormers, each of them different on each of the ends. So it was intentionally sort of, I think, a little humorous that they did that. So one of the issues, what we're trying to do is provide a master suite on the top floor. The top floor already has a bathroom and it has been occupied, but it doesn't have the headroom in order to have a code-compliant bathroom. So the bathroom that's in there now doesn't have the clearance over the fixtures that would allow us to even renovate the bathroom.
You're going to move that 90 degrees.
Right. That's really, so what's being proposed is the dormer that's already facing north, which is this dormer with more headroom, is being proposed for the west facing. So this dormer here that is now facing north, the same design would be here, and it would have 2 doors and a balcony. What we're in front of here, the board today for, is that the FAR associated with the house is higher than allowable. This change doesn't affect the FAR because, again, the attic is accessed by a stair and is finished, so it's already counted under. So there's no FAR impact associated with this, but there is additional volume of a few hundred cubic feet that's being added as a result of this.
Tell us what there's a little patio outside too, right? There will be.
There's no change to the hardscape that's being proposed right now. So the only change that is being proposed is the dormer at this point.
I meant outside the room.
Oh, I was like balcony.
Yeah, balcony. I said patio.
Right,
sorry.
so
We're
here,
having nomenclature issues here tonight, I guess.
so this is the proposed 3rd floor. So facing west, there's a balcony that's being proposed there. So that is here you can see it. Balcony rail here is supported by 2 brackets. Right now, the little entryway on the side of the building, on the south facing side, has a bracketed entrance. So we're going to do something similar to that. You can see this balcony extending beyond. This balcony extends in the area of the existing roof overhang, so it's not a significant protrusion, and it's also over an existing roof, so it's not adding coverage or anything to the project.
I had a lot of trouble understanding what Ed's parenthetical meant when he put it on your application. I mean, seeking a variance of section 224.13, I've got Norton, sorry. 224.34, additional cubic content under a roof in a non-conforming more than half-story 3rd floor. I mean, I could not envision what that meant. Fortunately, Mr. Patrick was there when I, visited, and she made it a little clearer than that definition does.
Right.
I think it's a fairly ingenious proposal, frankly. If the numbers were completely out of sorts, ingenuity aside, you'd still have trouble with it, but you're not really increasing over and above the existing FAR or coverage at all. And we got 3 letters from neighbors saying that this was a good idea, and I always think that that means the neighbors are planning to do the same thing, next month. But the nearest neighbor that you can see from the proposed balcony already has one of these. So I guess my analysis of motives was not correct there. I'd be very interested to see what it looks like when it's done, but I don't have a problem with the application as such. Any other folks want to comment or throw bricks or
I
anything?
concur with everything you said.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the application. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Vote from the right? Yes.
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 There you are.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next month on the.
Right.
Okay.